Hello plant people, welcome to another Q&A session. Question number 1. How do you flush and water your big moss poles? I'm getting so overwhelmed. Do not be overwhelmed, help is at hand. I've got some pretty big moss poles as you can see back there, and quite a number of them are in Leca. The plants are pretty huge. I need to flush them. How do I do this? I either take the plant outside, put the plant in the shower, or put the plant in the tub. So when I've got my plant in the bathtub or in the shower, I've got it sitting on a plate or at a dish or something, just to make sure none of that leca is making its way down into my plumbing. I then get my shower head or I get a hose and I flush down that leca nice and good. Flush it all out, make sure I'm getting all those roots that have sloughed off, making sure all that efflorescence is out. And then when I'm done with flushing that, I then start to attack the moss pole. I water down the moss pole as much as I can and I clean off those leaves, put it on a shower mode, and just make sure that I get all the dust off those leaves. That's the plant clean. That's the plant flushed. So that's the first stage. The next thing that I do is I let that plant sit for about 20 to 30 minutes, or it could even be longer, it could be shorter, whatever. And what I'm trying to do with this is make sure that all that water or nutrient solution that's stuck in my moss pole has seeped all the way down, has draped all the way down, and there's nothing dripping. I will then, while that plant is drip drying, get that cache pot, give it a nice wash, make sure everything is clean in there, put some fresh nutrient solution in there, and when my plant is drip dry, I'll put it back in its pot, put it back in its cache pot, and that is how I get my plants all happy and ready to grow again. Now, I know it's not for the faint-hearted. It's not something I do every day. It's not something I do every 2 weeks, definitely not. I mean, my plants are lucky if they get flushed every month. Sometimes it's even longer, even 2 months. So especially with the very big plants, they can go for pretty long time without flushing. It's not something that should put you off having big plants in Leca. And look, could they do better with a more regular flush? I don't know, maybe, but my plants seem to be happy, so I'll go with that, and that's what I do. Next question. My Leca reservoir empties a lot faster than the moss pole. Should I still top up the reservoir if the moss pole is still wet? Sometimes my moss pole is quite wet when I do my fortnightly flush. Should I wait or should I top up my reservoir? So yeah, no, you definitely need to pot up your reservoir, that's for sure. You need to see your plant in this way. I'll use my elbow to demonstrate. You've got the roots that are growing in the moss pole and you've got the roots that are growing in the pot. The roots that are growing in the moss pole are kept moist because you're keeping the moss moist. The roots that are living in the pot are kept moist and healthy because of the nutrient solution that's in the reservoir. So both of these should always be moist. You must never have your reservoir being dry, not at all. The reason why it's absolutely vital to make sure that your reservoir always has nutrient solution in there is we don't want our leca to become dry. Because when the leca becomes dry, it starts to take the liquid out of your roots. So it's looking for moisture. Leca's job is to get wet. It's looking for moisture wherever it can, and it'll get it anywhere. It doesn't know that this is a root. It doesn't care. It'll get that moisture from that root. Your root will start to dry. It will start to desiccate, and then it will basically die. And once your roots are dead, then your plants are heading towards death. So you always want to make sure that your reservoir is definitely topped up. So always top up that reservoir. Make sure it's not dry. Next question. Have you tried any other medium instead of using moss in your poles? So instead of using sphagnum moss in my moss pole, have I tried using anything else? Indeed, I have. I actually have made a pole with leca. About 2 years ago, I made a pole with leca, and that did not go very well. It was a little bit of a disaster because all I did was I got some wire mesh, I put some leca in there, I put a plant up, and nothing happened. That leca got so dry because I had no way of actually keeping it moist. So once the leca got dry, the area roots were not enticed to grow. There was nowhere to attach to, and that was the end. So I took that plant out of that environment, gave it a moss pole, and now it is my neon. I think that was my neon pothos. I did that too. I've also tried using rock wool. Rock wool is a growth media that's used a lot in hydroponics. So instead of using moss, I put rock wool in my pole. That as well was a little bit of a disaster because rock wool is very acidic and you need to treat it in a certain way in order for it to work. And I did, but it didn't work for some reason. And it just kept making my solution, my nutrient solution in my cache pot very acidic, and my plant was starting to tank. So I quickly got rid of that rock wool, put my plant back up on a moss pole, and yeah, that was the end of that. But I'm always looking for different media to put in my moss poles. I would like to stop using moss, but so far I haven't been able to find something that can work. And because I grow my plants in semi-hydroponics, using things like potting media or cocoa chips or things like that isn't really an option because I don't want those things to start degrading and falling into my nutrient solution or falling into my leca. So if you guys know anything that I could use for my moss poles instead of moss, I'm all ears. Please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. Next question, I would like a definition of area roots. What are area roots? What are climbers? Are they all the same? What can be used on a moss pole and what's better to grow just hanging down alongside of the pot? Area roots are roots that grow above ground and they perform different functions, and one of those is to anchor the plants to structures. So when the plant is growing in the wild, the area roots will anchor the plant to structures like trees and provide support. The other things that area roots do is they help with air exchange, they help with nourishment as well because they're able to absorb nutrition for the plant. So I've got my Epipremnum aureum marble queen here. This is a gorgeous marble queen that's living in leca, and this plant has got a lot of area roots. That's an area root over there. There's another area root over there, and these area roots have come from the nodes of the plant and have just woven their way into the moss pole. There are area roots everywhere. That's another area root. Hang on, where is that one? That's another area root over there. So the area roots come from an area of the plant called the node. So there, right there is the node, and you can see that there is a little area root that's going to develop and grow into my moss pole. It's one of the reasons why we put a plant up on a moss pole, because the moss pole supports the area roots. The moss pole provides nutrition for the area roots. It provides that structural support for the plant, and the plant is able to climb. And as it's climbing, the leaves of the plant get bigger. You can see how that leaf is looking. And see, they were pretty small at the start, but the leaves are definitely starting to size up. And remember, this plant is living in leca, so it is possible to do. And she's just looking so very, very glorious on this moss pole. So climbing plants and crawling plants are definitely not the same. Climbing plants obviously climb. They use their area roots to support the plant, and they grow up like the Epipremnum that I just showed you. Crawling plants, on the other hand, grow. They're terrestrial. They grow on the forest or the jungle floor, and they creep. They're also called creepers. They creep along. An example of a creeping plant is this one. This is my Philodendron mame. She's living in a rectangular pot and not the normal kind of nursery pot that you see, because this allows this plant to crawl along that pot. And I think this plant is actually outgrowing this pot at the moment, but she's doing really, really well. And one of the things about crawling plants actually is, oh, hang on, I'll turn this around, is the rhizomes. Look at that shoot there, that's actually above the ground. In other plants, you'd normally have that in the soil or in the medium, whatever you're using, but for the crawlers, that's above ground because it allows the plant to crawl and keep growing. So that right there is my Philodendron mame. She's doing, I'm really, really happy with this plant. She's just absolutely delectable. Oh, they're really heavy. This one here is my Philodendron Dean McDowell. That's a Dean McDowell. Look at those gorgeous heart-shaped, pillowy, velvety leaves. It is just glorious. She's living in a rectangular pot, and this plant is growing that way. So there's still quite a lot of space for this plant to grow in its creeper fashion. That's its newest leaf there. You can see it's still hardening off. It's still a light green and it's looking fantastic. So of course, not all philodendrons are crawlers. Some philodendrons are climbers. This is a Philodendron White Princess, and this is definitely a climber. You can see it going up there, and you can see it has some area roots. Oh, not sure if I can show that to you. It's got some area roots over there. So this plant is actually going to be needing a moss pole or something to stake onto and climb up in order for those leaves to continue looking as good as they do and get bigger and bigger as they climb. So those area roots are very important in helping the plant to climb. It's not just philodendrons. I've got my monstera here. Monsteras are also very good climbers. So you can have all sorts of different plants that are climbers and that are crawlers. If you're not sure what a plant does, I'd really recommend just looking it up, because there's nothing worse than getting a plant that's a crawler and forcing it to climb. That's just going against its nature. It's going against its DNA. It's not going to end well, and you really shouldn't do it. Plants like this one. This is my Scindapsus pictus exotica. This plant here is a climber. It does climb. It's got those area roots, it's got those nodes, but I'm letting this one trail. These kinds of plants are usually quite good at trailing. It's a bit difficult to get a crawling plant to trail. I don't know if difficult's the word. I'm not sure. It might even be impossible. I don't know. If anybody knows about a crawling plant that's trailing, please let me know in the description below. I haven't seen one, but I think maybe it's because their stems are a lot thicker. I don't know. But anyway, plants like this one, very easy to trail. Plants like epipremnums, those are very easy trailing plants. You can use those. They can climb as well, but they can trail as well. I've got this one. These are my little Cebu blue cuttings. I'm going to pot this up and put it onto a moss pole actually, but I could equally let it trail. But as you can see, in the trailing state, those leaves are just not getting bigger. So if you let your plant trail, the chances of you getting that plant to look like a mature specimen are very, very low. It probably will not get to the state that you'd like it to get to in terms of maturity if you're letting it trail. The leaves are probably going to get smaller as it gets longer and longer and longer. So if you're in for the big leaves, you want your climbing plants to climb. If you're finding value from this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Next question. I know you're really the queen of leca, but have you ever thought about using a different medium for semihydro, for example, lechuza pon? Indeed, I have. I'm always searching for ways to help my plants, for ways to optimize my plant care. So I definitely have used lechuza pon. I got some pon because I've really started buying a lot of lechuza self-watering pots. And when you buy a self-watering pot, you get a little sample of lechuza pon in there. So I used that pon and I really like it. It's worked really well for my plants. So yes, I am open to using different media and I have used lechuza pon. Next question. What is the difference between leca and pon? Both leca and pon are soil substitutes, so there's that. Leca is clay balls, and there's different kinds of leca. You've got your normal leca, which looks like that, and those are the usual brown balls, and they've got different diameters. Sometimes they might have different colors. And then I like to use this one as well. This is what I like to call my Italian leca. A lot smaller bits and more irregular shape, so it's not got the characteristic round balls that leca has. And there's all sorts of concepts about what kind of leca you use and why you'd want to use different shapes and sizes and so on. Check out the video linked above, and I discuss leca and different kinds and that kind of thing in greater detail there. Pon is a substrate that's made by a company called Lechuza, a German company called Lechuza. That is a packet of Lechuza pon. You can make your own pon, but Lechuza Pon is specifically made by this company, and that's what Lechuza Pon looks like. It's quite granular, a lot smaller, and made up of different constituents, but they're both soil substitutes. A few differences between Leca and Pon. The first glaring difference is the price. Leca is a heck of a lot cheaper than Pon is. Pon is a lot more expensive. You can get a small bag of Pon and you can get heaps and heaps of Leca. So there's that. Pon is also a lot heavier than Leca. Leca is quite light, and the reason this is important is when you're growing plants that are a lot bigger in Leca, depending on the kind of setup you've got, depending on the kind of cash pot that you've got, plants like very tall plants like the fiddle leaf fig bambino or the fiddle leaf fig tends to get top heavy. And when a plant is top heavy and doesn't have any other additional support like a moss pole, it's very difficult to get it steady in the pot, and you have a lot of toppling over incidents, and I experienced this firsthand with my fiddle leaf figs. One way you can stop the plants toppling over is to use something like a Lechuza Pon, which is a lot heavier. The other difference is, of course, Lechuza Pon is a lot smaller than Leca is. Those granules are pretty small, which in and of itself is not necessarily problematic, but I find it problematic because when I put the Lechuza Pon in a nursery pot the first time, it does tend to fall out of the holes of my nursery pot, and that can be rather annoying. I do find that rather annoying, but once the Lechuza Pon is set, the plant has grown into it, the roots have grown into it, it kind of binds into each other and just becomes one solid mass, and you don't have a lot of those granules falling out. When you're transitioning a plant from soil to semi-hydroponics, some people say that that transition goes easier if you're moving that plant into Pon and not Leca, because when you're moving a plant from soil to Pon, you don't have to vigorously take off all that soil as you need to do when you're putting it in Leca. I don't know, I haven't experienced this myself, so I can't speak to it, but that is something that some people have observed. The other thing that's different is that Lechuza Pon actually has slow release fertilizer that's built into it. It's got some slow release fertilizer, so in theory you're not meant to actually fertilize your plant for the first 6 months because it's got fertilizer in it, whereas Leca has absolutely nothing. So if you're wanting to immediately get into semi-hydro without faffing around with nutrients and things, Pon might be a way to go, but you need to remember that 6 months down the track you need to start giving your plant nutrient, otherwise it's going to die because that slow release fertilizer is now gone. So those are some of the major differences between Leca and Pon, and in my experience what you use is really dependent on what your budget is, I think, at the end of the day, and maybe just personal preference. I haven't really noticed anything different. Personally, I still prefer to use Leca rather than Pon. I do have a few plants living in Pon, like this one. This is my Calathea rapens. It's my pink Panther plant. I moved it from soil and I put it in this self-watering Lechuza pot with the Pon that it came with, and it is loving life. It has not skipped a beat. So that Lechuza Pon is working wonders for this plant. I've also got my Alocasia silver dragon living in Pon. I've actually mixed this Pon with some very coarse perlite, so it's not just Pon only. I've got some perlite in there just to increase that aeration, because I do find Pon can be quite a bit dense. So because I'm experimenting a lot with my alocasias at the moment, I put perlite in there, and so far so good. That seems to be working very well. So yeah, I do have some plants in Pon, and when I get some Pon, because I've bought a Lechuza pot, I will use the Pon as I grab it. Next question. I can't get my philodendrons to thrive. They grow really slow for me, and I love philodendrons. I have so many questions. What was your plant like when you got it? What medium is it living in? What's the light situation that you've got in your home? Is the plant cold? What's the temperature around where the plant is? Is there adequate humidity for the plant? Do you have pests? So many things determine how slowly or how fast or how much a plant thrives. Control what you can. and the rest is up to the plant. Sometimes we just need to be patient and the plant will take off when it wants to. This here is my Philodendron Congo. I've had this plant for over 2 years. It was one of my really early plants that I put into Leca, and it was really small, and that's how we started. It was just so tiny, and I persisted with it. I wanted to throw it away so many times, but look at that. Look at that. Look at that. There's a new leaf coming there. This plant is finally going to start looking like a proper Philodendron Congo, and I'm happy it took that long for it to get going, but now it's definitely doing the thing. That's it in Leca there. So yeah, sometimes we just need to be patient, and if you've done everything that you can, your plant will grow. Next question, can any plant be put in Leca? I have succulents, aloes, tristantias, ZZ. Can they go in Leca? My answer is a yes, 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 with a caveat. I actually don't know if any plant can go in Leca because I haven't tried all the plants. That's just absolutely impossible. My goal as the Leca Queen is to try and grow as many plants in Leca as I can. That is my ultimate goal. That's what I'm trying to do. So every plant that I get, I try and put it in Leca. And if it doesn't work out in Leca, I try and understand what happened. Why didn't this plant thrive in Leca? And invariably, I always find that it's something that I'm doing or something that I'm not doing, and not necessarily that the plant can't thrive in Leca. So those plants that you mentioned, you say you have a ZZ plant. I say I have a ZZ plant. This is one of my 5 ZZ plants that I've got living in Leca. This is my ZZ Jungle Warrior living in Leca. Look at those roots. This plant is thriving. It is loving life in Leca. So ZZ plants in Leca, yes, please. Yes, they can. You say you've got tristantias? I've got tristantias. This is my tristantia ball. I absolutely love it. I don't think I've shown you guys this bowl. It's not ready yet. I want to put as many different kinds of varieties of tristantia as I can in this. I don't have too many yet, but I think she's coming along, and that is living in Leca. So that is very possible. And because they root very easily, these plants, it's just so easy. You just whack it in the Leca and off it goes. That there is my peperomia, watermelon peperomia, living in Leca, loving life. This is new in this bowl. It's yet to fill it out. I cannot wait for this bowl to be full. Can any plant live in Leca? I don't know. I'm trying to prove that. Next question. I want to ask, do you have any succulents in Leca or in Semihydro? And what's that experience been like for you? I'm not really a cactus girl. I'm not really a succulent girl, but I did grab one. I have one, and I don't know. I put it in Semihydro probably 2 weeks ago now. I didn't use Leca though. I used a combination of pond and perlite. That's what that's living in. Very shallow reservoir, if at all any. And I'm really hoping that this plant roots and takes off. I just whacked it off someone's front yard with permission. It was my sister-in-law gave this to me. So that was good. So yeah, I have no idea what's going to happen with this plant. I'm really hoping that things go well. Do you happen to know if Super Thrive or Liquid Dirt is similar or comparable to Growth Technology Foliage Focus? Or is there something specific that you would suggest I use in the meantime until I can find some foliage focus? Well, I don't think Super Thrive and what was the other one? Liquid Dirt are equivalent to Growth Technology Foliage Focus. I'll tell you why. Super Thrive is said to contain kelp and vitamin B. So it doesn't have the essential minerals, all the essential minerals that a plant needs to survive, which would make it a nutrient. So this seems more like it's an additive to me. It's not a nutrient. Liquid Dirt, I'll have to read this because it's a mouthful. Liquid Dirt is said to be a fully digested elemental nutrient supplement system. So it's a supplement. It's not a nutrient. It doesn't have all the nutrients that a plant needs. Now, Liquid Dirt contains poultry litter, rabbit manure, bat guano, cricket frass, humic shale, worm castings, and the list goes on. It's an organic product, so definitely not equal to what growth technology is. Now, the thing about using organic substances in semi-hydro, it's not really something that's recommended because a plant actually absorbs the essential minerals that it needs in their ionic state, in their inorganic state. Fertilizers or amendments that are made for plants in soil are different from ones that are made for plants in semi-hydro, because when a plant is living in soil, the soil contains bacteria, microbes, and other things like that that actually break down that fertilizer or that nutrient or that supplement. It breaks it down so that it converts the essential minerals from the organic state to the inorganic state so that the plant can absorb them. So you can't interchange the two. I've got a great video that explains all this. Just check the link above and that'll take you straight to it. I won't go into great detail about that right now because I have in this video. But basically, I would not be substituting Super Thrive or liquid dirt as a nutrient for my plants in semi-hydroponics. There are great alternatives out there that you can use for hydroponic plants like general hydroponics. Dynagrow Foliage Pro, I'm told, is really, really good. Now, I must say I haven't used any of these, the general hydroponics or the Dynagrow. I haven't used them personally. Other people say they work very, very well. So if you're in a tight spot, you might like to try those ones. They might work better, but I use Growth Technology Foliage Focus. It's a single bottle. You're not mixing 3 different things and it works very well. And that's what I recommend. Next question. I would love to see a video that shows a week in the life of the Leca Queen or a day in the life of the Leca Queen. How do you treat your plants? Do you water all your plants at the same time? What's your plant routine? What do you do? Wow, my plant routine is all over the place. I actually don't have a routine because I'm so busy with my kids, so busy with outside activities. I don't have a lot of time to take care of my plants actually. So when I see that something needs doing, I'll do it. If something is running low, I'll top up that reservoir immediately. So I've always got like nutrient solution dotted all over, ready to go. I've always got, you know, my pressure sprayer is at the ready. I've always got my solution for my moss poles at the ready because I never know when I'm going to have an opening. And when I have an opening to take care of plants, I dive straight into it and I take care of my plants that way. So yeah, no. A week in the life of my plant routine just doesn't exist. It changes from day to day. And sometimes when I've got a bit more time, when I don't have to go anywhere that weekend, I might decide I'm going to flush all my Hoyas. And you know, when you've got like 60 Hoyas, it takes all day to flush your Hoyas. So yeah, it's just every which way. It's just all chaos in my head. But it does get done somehow and my plants survive regardless. Next question. I've been inspired to try Leca watching your videos and I actually received a gift of Leca for Christmas. Oh, that was a fabulous gift. I had some water propagations that I've put into Leca. They've been in Leca for a week, but I'm so nervous. What signs should I look for to know that these plants have taken to the Leca? I'll use my silver dragon to demonstrate this. So even though I didn't put this in Leca, it's in Horn, but it's still semi-hydro and the same principles apply. So when you've moved your plant from propagation into Leca, what you're looking for is that leaf. You want to make sure that that leaf is nice and firm and it's not droopy. It's standing up straight, it's not droopy. Once you see that, everything's fine. I wouldn't worry about anything because of course that it means that you've got your plant in a nice, warm, bright spot. It's humid and all the rest of those things that you need to do to get your plant to be healthy. And if the leaves are looking okay, it means the roots must be okay because remember, if the roots aren't good, your leaves are going to tell you about it. So if the leaves are fine, I wouldn't touch it. I would just leave it and let nature take its course because if you've just put your plant in semi-hydro, looking at those roots through the Leca or through the pond, you're not going to see anything because they're still very small. But if your leaves are fine, your plant is fine. That's what I'd be looking for. Next question. How long do you consider the nutrient solution left in a cache pot to be okay? Approximately when should you be dumping out the cash pot and putting fresh nutrients into your cash pot? Good question. So when you've got your plant living in Leca, you've got your plant in the nursery pot and you've got the cash pot. This cash pot here has the nutrient solution that your plant uses to grow. Now, I recommend that you get your cash pot, throw out the nutrient solution, clean your cash pot, put fresh nutrient solution every 2 weeks, once a fortnight. That's what I recommend that you do. Why do I say you must do this? There are about 3 major reasons why you should do this. The first thing is you've got a depletion of nutrients in your nutrient solution. Your plant is actually using the nutrients in that solution, so they're depleting. So you want to make sure that your plant has got enough nutrients to help it grow. 1. Number 2, as your plant is using up that nutrient solution, the nutrient solution is also evaporating. The pH in that nutrient solution is changing. And as the pH changes, you get almost a kind of a nutrient blockout, really, because the pH in the nutrient solution for a plant in Semihydro has to remain within strict parameters. Otherwise, those nutrients will not be absorbed by the plant. The third reason is your nutrient solution is going to be depleting of oxygen. Nutrient solution has oxygen in it because remember, water is H2O and there's oxygen in that water. Your roots need oxygen in order to stay healthy. Now, as that oxygen is being used up by your plant, it's being depleted. You need to add more. The only way to add more is to add fresh nutrient solution. So you need to do that for these reasons. Big question. Do I change my nutrient solution after every 2 weeks? No, I do not. Why? Life. That's what can I tell you? Life. Should I change it after every 2 weeks? Of course I should. I should, but I don't. But my plants are alive. They're not dead. And they're, dare I say it, thriving. Could my plants do better if I changed my nutrient solution every 2 weeks? Maybe they would. I don't know. I'll never know because I'll never change my nutrient solution every 2 weeks. I've got way too many plants for that. I'm way too busy. I just don't have time for that. If a plant can't survive, if I don't change its nutrient solution every 2 weeks, it's just going to die and that's going to be the end of it. Tough love in this casa because I can't do anything else. But if you can change your nutrients after 2 weeks, I greatly encourage you to do that. You really, really should. Your plants will thank you for it. I love this question. I think it was the best. I want my plants to grow overnight. I want them to grow now. How can I tell if my plant growth is slow? Do I need to move to another location? Do I need to water more? Do I need to water less? Oh, what can I do? Oh man, I wish I knew because I would love my plants to grow really, really quickly as well. But unfortunately, that's not how nature works. Nature takes her sweet time. Mother Nature does what she needs to do in her own time. We can't rush these things. All you can do is control the things you can control. And what can you control? You can control the light conditions of your plant. You can control the humidity around your plant. Make sure you're feeding your plant. Fertilize your plant regularly or change your nutrient solution regularly. Make sure you're on top of the pests. Make sure there are no pests around because that's another reason why plants don't thrive. So there's things you can do to help your plants grow. Aside from that, you know, you just gotta wait. You just gotta wait and let nature do its thing. Keep those questions coming. Watch out for the next Q&A post in my community tab, asking for more questions. I love these sessions. I feel closer to you guys. You help me learn new things. I have to go and do my research before I answer them. So I love it. Now, going back to making sure that your plants are thriving. If you want to know how to make your plants thrive, if you want to learn some plant guru secrets, watch this next video. These are some things that people who have absolutely awesome plants do that you might not know about. I'll see you there.